I'm joined here today at the DNC in Chicago by Congressman Jared Moskowitz. Thanks so much for taking the time.
No, good to be with you.
So I want to talk about the general vibe of this convention here relative to what Republicans did with both Donald Trump's press conferences.
We have a vibe.
There is a vibe with relative to Donald Trump's press conferences, his rallies, and of course the RNC. So talk about what Democrats are able to do by virtue of keeping this whole sense of this whole DNC optimistic, upbeat, and hopeful, and how that is so devastating for what Trump is trying to accomplish by dragging this entire race into the mud.
Well, I mean, first of all, we're bringing joy and levity and happiness to the process. I mean, look at Trump. He just looks miserable doing what he's doing. I mean, he's.
Oh, you don't think standing out there in front of Bedminster with some rotting meat on a table?
Listen, again, I don't know what guys like walking around the mall or just thinking to himself, I'm better looking than that woman over there. Like, I'm better looking than Kamala. He should go back to when he was talking about Hannibal Lecter. He was crushing it when he was doing Hannibal Lecter. He was up in the polls. There was no Kamala. All of a sudden there's Kamala and he's away from Hannibal Lecter. She's got huge crowd sizes. And it's just under his skin in a way. And I think Tim Walz is doing a really good job also of delivering that message and unhinging Trump, getting him off his message, and that's been working.
I think the saddest part of all of this is watching him continue to try and shoehorn into reality this idea that he's still running against Joe Biden. Even today, Carolyn Levitt, his spokesperson.
It's been a bad breakup for Trump.
I mean, a bad breakup is an understatement.
Yeah.
He is straight up doing fan fiction about this idea that Joe Biden was going to swoop in and re-announce that he was
running against Joe Biden, and then there was a coup.
I mean, doesn't it undermine his whole theory of this idea that he's a strong man, that he's showing his weakness to such a degree that he won't even accept the fact that he's running against Kamala Harris and continues trying to insist that he's running against Joe Biden?
First of all, part of their campaign strategy was that Joe Biden is so old, Kamala's going to be president anyway. Right? They were using that as a negative.
You would think then that he would be more prepared to run against Kamala Harris because now there's no ambiguity there.
Correct. But I think what they misjudged is, one, that there wouldn't be a primary, that the party would coalesce. Democrats are always like, oh, we fall in love and Republicans fall in line. Actually, we're doing both.
Yeah.
We're falling in love and falling in line at the same time. I think that's caught them off guard. And then, the Trump metrics, right? Crowd size. He sees her crowd size, and it is just unhinging him in a way, and he's going back to his old tactics, right? Birth certificate 2.0,
right.
She's not really black, them going after Tim Walz, trying to nitpick everything. They're not on the issues, they're on the personalities, and it's not working, it's turning off women. And so what we need to do here is we need to remember that this election is not over. This is not the election, right? We can come here, we can be happy, we can be celebrating, but we're not winning. We don't know that we're winning. And so we have 70 plus days. People can be early voting, so even less, to continue to deliver the message. There's this idea out there that they want anybody than Trump. And now we have a candidate that can deliver that message to them, that you don't have to pick Trump anymore, right? You can pick Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, and they got to go out in the campaign and define themselves. Because, it's a small runway here, right?
Yeah.
And before they define us, we got to go out and tell America what we're for.
That brings up such an interesting point in terms of defining people, because you remember at the RNC when Donald Trump had the opportunity for the first time to introduce J.D. Vance to the American people, he spent a minute doing it because he couldn't stand having the attention not heaped onto himself. And so instead, he didn't define J.D. Vance. He didn't spend any time on J.D. Vance, and that created a vacuum that the Democrats then filled with the reality of who J.D. Vance is, and that is a target-rich environment, by the way. But the difference between what Trump did with Vance versus what Kamala Harris did with Tim Walz is the fact that she was generous with her heaping attention onto Tim Walz, showing the American people who he is, because 71% of Americans didn't know who he is. And so the fact that now we know he is a farmer, he's a rural American, he's a Midwesterner, he's a coach, a high school teacher, a union guy, that wouldn't have been possible if she wasn't so generous with her time, and that stands in stark contrast to what Trump did with J.D. Vance.
Well, and it's strange because Trump, like him or don't like him, he knows how to communicate. He understands the medium. He knows you got to over-communicate, fill the vacuum, right?
Yeah.
And even though he loved J.D. Vance's resume, he picked a guy who's not a great communicator. Walz is.
Yes.
Walz is a great communicator, and he's communicating to the middle of the country, right? Which is why they picked J.D. Vance. They thought wonderful story, he wrote a book, blah, blah, blah. But Walz is actually communicating to the people that Trump wanted to talk to.
Well, let me ask you a question, because a lot of what we see, I mean, you look at someone like Tim Walz, and you're like, on paper, this guy looks like he could be a Republican.
No, Tim Walz won the lottery. He's like the luckiest guy, and he knows it. He's like, I'm just happy to be here.
But I'm saying, like, this is a guy who is proud of his defense of the Second Amendment. Again, he's a Midwesterner. He's a rural American. And so on paper, you would look at him and you would think that, like, this guy is very appealing to Republicans.
He's real.
He's real. But this is me saying that as a Democrat. I'm curious whether you think that the appeal that he has outwardly is enough to bring in Republicans into the fold by looking at somebody like Tim Walz.
I've been in Congress now almost 2 years, and one of the things I think American people like is they like when they think somebody is genuine.
Yeah.
Right? Whether they agree with them or don't agree with them, they like when they don't think it's an act, and they think that person's being themselves. And that's what they're getting with Tim Walz and the whole family, right? They're getting a genuine guy who has the experience to be vice president, but also be himself.
Yeah.
And I think that it lets people be comfortable with him.
And that is further underscored by the fact that his opponent, the other vice presidential candidate, J.D. Vance, is so aggressively phony. I mean, this is a guy who himself called Donald Trump America's Hitler just a few years ago and is now on his ticket. This is a guy who has to do apologia for Donald Trump while he denies Americans' biraciality. And dude has 3 biracial kids of his own.
Yeah, listen, on the right, we see the grift all the time.
Yeah.
JD is the ultimate grifter here, right? This is not who he is, right? He didn't have some conversion therapy all of a sudden that happened. He was an anti-Trumper. He said things about Trump that I haven't even said.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now Trump is, the second coming of Jesus.
Right.
It is a grift.
So we are at the DNC. As you made clear, this isn't real life. I mean, this is best case scenario. This is a show put on by the Democrats for the Democrats, and rightfully so. And I think that we are using this opportunity to showcase a lot of talent, especially a lot of younger talent that we have in the Democratic Party. What has to be done? What's our biggest point of weakness that Democrats have to focus on as we head toward this final sprint to November?
Economy. I mean, it is about the economy. James Carville coined it, right? It's all about the economy, and it is. Yes, inflation is getting better. Yes, it looks like we may get a soft landing, but there still are a lot of people that are struggling at the grocery store and struggling to keep up.
And so how do you make that point then, knowing that we have to both praise the fact that Democrats have overseen a severely mismanaged economy when we took office, that we have the strongest economy in the world right now, but that still doesn't compensate for the fact that people are still hurting. So how do you make that pitch?
Well, you do both. And Kamala's really good at that, right? She can talk about an issue but also be compassionate. So she can explain to people that, yes, things are getting better, but that doesn't mean that things are getting better for you, right? And here's what we need to do to help your situation, right? And so, yeah, in the macro, things are getting better, but it's not down there. And so, look, she's coming out with plans to talk about it. Trump has no plans. Right. He's got slogans and hats.
Yeah.
Okay, he has no plan to fix any of this stuff other than wanting to give more tax breaks to his wealthy friends.
Right. I think one of the plans that he came out when he was asked specifically how he would solve the issue of credit card debt was vote for Trump. That was the solution to credit card debt.
Well, actually, his favorite line, I love it now. Anytime he gets a tough question, he goes, I'm going to be making a very big announcement.
Oh, yeah, 2 weeks.
I'm going to be making a very big announcement in 2 weeks on that issue. What are you going to do on the abortion issue on the ballot in Florida, Mr. President? I'm going to be announcing that at a very upcoming, it'll be a very big announcement.
He's going to announce it very strongly.
Right, it'll be very strong. It's going to be a strong plan. One of the better plans you've ever seen.
Many people
but we're
are
not
saying,
going to put it in writing.
You know, he saw a bunch of very, very muscular men, tears in their eyes, and they said, sir, we've never seen a plan this strong.
Yeah, no, it's very true. I mean, look, I'm not going to lie. There was a couple of moments where the Hulk Hogan thing got me.
well, I don't think we'll see.
I'm a kid in the 90s.
Yeah,
okay?
no, I feel you, but I was a WWF guy, not a WCW guy.
Okay, fine.
So it's Undertaker for me. Get the Undertaker on stage. I think that's what we need at the DNC.
Ultimate Warrior, Undertaker.
Yeah. All right, well, Congressman Moskowitz, thank you so much for taking the time.
No, you got it. Good to be with you.